If you think crying in my penthouse is going to change my mind, you're more naive than I thought. Kai's voice cut through the rain-soaked silence like a blade, his arms crossed as he stood in the doorway of his luxury apartment. The man before him, drenched, trembling, eyes red from tears mixed with rainwater, looked up with a desperation that could shatter stone. "Please," Adrian whispered, his voice breaking. "Just let me explain." Kai's jaw tightened, his heart doing something dangerous behind his ribs, something he'd sworn he'd never allow again. This wasn't how their story was supposed to begin. But here they were, a broken man begging at his door and Kai standing there, fighting every instinct that told him to pull Adrian inside and never let go. 3 months earlier, the city of Vancouver had been painted in autumn gold, and Kai Chen had been untouchable. At 24, he'd built an empire in tech consulting that made men twice his age respect him and competitors fear him. His penthouse overlooked the harbor, his closet held custom suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and his reputation preceded him everywhere he went. Cold, calculating, powerful, that's what they called him in boardrooms and at charity galas. What they didn't know was that Kai had built those walls deliberately, brick by brick, after his heart had been demolished 3 years ago by someone he'd trusted completely. He didn't do relationships anymore. He didn't do vulnerability. He showed up, he dominated the room he left, simple, clean, effective. His friends, the few he allowed close, had stopped trying to set him up. Even his younger sister Jenny had given up her matchmaking schemes. "You're going to die alone in that glass tower," she'd told him last Christmas. Kai had simply smiled and poured himself another scotch. Alone was safe, alone meant control, alone meant no one could hurt him again. Or so he thought, until the day Adrian Walsh crashed into his carefully constructed world like a meteor through atmosphere. It happened on a Thursday afternoon in October. Kai had been leaving a client meeting at a downtown hotel when he decided to walk the 10 blocks back to his office instead of calling his driver. The air was crisp, the leaves were performing their annual death dance in shades of amber and crimson, and he needed to clear his head after 2 hours of corporate politics. He'd been checking his phone, responding to an urgent email, when someone slammed into him at the intersection of Robson and Bird. The collision sent his phone skittering across the pavement, and Kai's immediate reaction was annoyance that sharpened into anger. "Watch where you're," the words died in his throat. The man who'd run into him was bent over, gathering up scattered papers that the wind was trying to steal, his messenger bag hanging open, his coffee cup rolling into the gutter. He looked up and Kai felt something shift in his chest, something he hadn't felt in 3 years. The stranger had dark blonde hair that fell across his forehead, blue eyes that held an ocean of worry, and a face that was both beautiful and somehow heartbreakingly open. "I'm so sorry," the man stammered, shoving papers back into his bag with trembling hands. "I'm late for a job interview and I wasn't looking," and he spotted Kai's phone and lunged for it before a passing car could claim it. "Your screen's not cracked," the stranger said, handing it back with a sheepish smile that did something dangerous to Kai's carefully maintained emotional distance. "I'm really sorry, are you okay?" Kai should have said yes, should have walked away, should have let this moment dissolve into the city's endless stream of forgettable interactions. Instead, he found himself looking at this man, really looking, and noticing the worn edges of his jacket, the scuff marks on his shoes, the desperation barely hidden beneath his apologetic smile. "You're going to be late," Kai heard himself say. "Where's your interview?" The man blinked, surprised. Bentley Tower, it's another 6 blocks and my bus just left and I'm heading that direction," Kai interrupted, making a decision that his logical brain immediately questioned. "Come on." He started walking, long strides that forced the stranger to hurry to keep up. "Wait, really, you don't have to. I don't do things I don't want to do," Kai said, not looking back. "What's your name?" Adrian Walsh." The name settled into Kai's mind like it had been waiting for a place to land. "Kai Chen, what's the interview for?" They walked together through the October afternoon and Adrian talked. He was 23, had recently moved to Vancouver from a small town on Vancouver Island and was interviewing for a junior position at a marketing firm. He was nervous, clearly, but there was something else in his voice, a determination that Kai recognized because he'd once carried it himself, the kind of hunger that came from having nothing and wanting everything. "This is my 4th interview this month," Adrian admitted as they waited at a crosswalk. "The last 3, let's just say I'm getting really good at rejection." There was humor in his voice, but Kai heard the exhaustion underneath it. "Why Vancouver?" Kai asked, genuinely curious despite himself. Adrian's smile softened into something private, something sad. "Because I needed to be somewhere I could be myself. Small towns don't always make space for people like us." The casual us hung in the air between them, an acknowledgement that needed no explanation. Kai felt something tighten in his chest. "And is it making space for you?" "Still figuring that out," Adrian said quietly. They reached Bentley Tower, a glass and steel monument to corporate success, and Adrian stopped at the entrance. "Thank you for walking with me for the rescue mission." He extended his hand, formal and sweet, and Kai shook it, feeling the warmth of Adrian's palm against his own. Good luck, Kai said, and meant it more than he'd meant anything in weeks. Adrian grinned, that heartbreaking open smile again, and disappeared through the revolving doors. Kai stood there for a moment longer than necessary, watching him go before shaking his head and walking away. It was a chance encounter, nothing more. He would never see Adrian Walsh again. The city was full of beautiful men with sad stories and desperate dreams. This one was no different. He told himself that all the way back to his office. He told himself that through 3 conference calls and a contract negotiation. He told himself that as he lay in bed that night, staring at his ceiling, remembering blue eyes and a smile that felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. What Kai didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that Adrian Walsh had gone home that evening to a basement apartment in East Vancouver, had stared at his rejection email, and had thought about the handsome stranger who'd walked him to his interview. The stranger with dark eyes that seemed to see everything, with a voice like silk over steel, with an aura of power that should have been intimidating but had somehow felt safe. Adrian had whispered the name to himself before falling asleep, Kai Chen. He'd wondered if they'd ever cross paths again. Vancouver was a big city after all, the odds were astronomical, but fate, it turned out, had other plans. 2 weeks passed. Kai threw himself into work the way he always did, using 18-hour days and impossible projects to keep his mind occupied and his heart locked away. He negotiated a deal that brought his firm $3 million in new revenue. He gave a keynote speech at a tech conference that had venture capitalists sliding business cards across tables. He went to the gym at 5 a.m., worked until midnight, and told himself he was content. His sister didn't believe him. "You look tired," Jenny said when she met him for lunch on a Wednesday. She was a pediatric surgeon, brilliant and relentless, the only person alive who could call Kai out and get away with it. "You always look tired lately, but this is different. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Kai said, cutting into his steak with more force than necessary. "Work is good, numbers are up. The Peterson acquisition is moving forward. I didn't ask about work, I asked about you." Jenny's dark eyes, so similar to his own, studied him with surgical precision. "When was the last time you did something that wasn't related to business? When was the last time you went on a date, or saw a movie, or had a conversation that didn't end with someone signing a contract?" Kai set down his fork, meeting his sister's gaze. "I'm fine, Jen, I don't need—" "You need to be happy," she interrupted gently. "Success isn't the same thing as happiness, and you know it." The conversation haunted Kai for the rest of the week. Was he happy? He had everything he'd worked for: money, respect, independence. Security. He'd built a life where no one could hurt him because he didn't let anyone close enough to try. That was smart, wasn't it? That was self-preservation. His therapist during their monthly session had a different take. "Control is an illusion, Kai," Dr. Morrison said, his voice kind but unflinching. "You can't prevent pain by avoiding connection, you're just trading one kind of suffering for another." "I'm not suffering," Kai argued. "I'm thriving. Are you?" The question sat in Kai's chest like a stone. That Saturday evening, Kai did something out of character. He went to a charity gala he'd planned to skip. It was for LGBTQ+ youth services, a cause he donated to anonymously every year but rarely attended in person. His assistant had insisted he make an appearance. "You need to be seen supporting the community," Marcus had said firmly. "And you need to get out of that penthouse before you become one with your furniture." So Kai had put on his best Tom Ford suit, styled his hair, and showed up at the Fairmont Hotel ballroom with a check for $50,000 and absolutely no expectations. The event was elegant: string quartet, champagne fountains, Vancouver's queer elite mixing with allies and activists. Kai made his rounds, shaking hands, making small talk, deflecting questions about his personal life with the ease of long practice. He was considering an early exit when he saw him. Adrian Walsh, wearing a simple black suit that was slightly too big for his frame, standing by the silent auction table with a glass of wine and an expression that suggested he was drowning in a sea of strangers. Their eyes met across the room, and Kai watched recognition bloom on Adrian's face, followed by surprise, followed by something that looked almost like relief. Before Kai could decide whether to approach, Adrian was walking toward him, weaving through clusters of conversation with determined grace. "Kai Chen," Adrian said when he reached him, a smile breaking across his face like sunrise. "I can't believe it's you. What are the odds?" "Astronomical," Kai replied, and felt his own mouth curve into a smile he hadn't authorized. "I didn't expect to see you here. I volunteer with the youth center this organization supports," Adrian explained. "They gave the volunteers free tickets. I almost didn't come. I don't really know anyone, but I'm glad I did now." There was honesty in his voice that Kai found both refreshing and terrifying. They stood there, 2 men in a room full of people, and suddenly everyone else became background noise. "Did you get the job?" Kai asked, remembering their last conversation. "At the marketing firm?" Adrian's expression flickered. "No, they went with someone who had more experience, but I got a different one actually." Junior event coordinator for a nonprofit. It doesn't pay much, but it's good work, meaningful work. There was pride in his voice, the kind that came from building something with your own hands. That's good, Kai said, and realized he genuinely meant it. You seem like someone who'd be good at that, helping people. What about you? Adrian asked, tilting his head slightly. What do you do, Kai Chen, besides rescuing clumsy strangers on street corners? Kai felt a laugh escape, unexpected and genuine. I run a tech consulting firm. We help companies optimize their digital infrastructure. That sounds impressive and also like something I'd need a dictionary to fully understand, Adrian said with a grin. But I'm guessing you're very good at it. I don't do things I'm not good at. That must be nice, Adrian said softly, something wistful in his voice. Being that confident, that certain of yourself. The vulnerability in those words struck something deep in Kai's chest. Before he could respond, the MC announced dinner would be served and the crowd began moving toward the tables. Are you sitting with anyone? Kai heard himself ask. Adrian shook his head. Flying solo tonight, sit with me. It wasn't a question and Adrian didn't treat it like one. Okay, he said simply and followed Kai to a table near the front where Kai's name was printed on a place card. The dinner passed in a blur of conversation that felt effortless in a way Kai wasn't accustomed to. Adrian asked questions that weren't about business or money or success. He wanted to know about Kai's sister, about his favorite books, about the last time he'd laughed so hard he couldn't breathe. Probably when Jenny convinced me to try karaoke last year, Kai admitted, surprising himself with the honesty. I was terrible, catastrophically terrible. She recorded it and threatens to release it to the internet whenever I refuse to do something she wants. Adrian laughed, a sound that seemed to light up his entire face. I would pay money to see that. Serious businessman Kai Chen butchering. Don't, Kai warned, but he was smiling. It was livin' on a prayer. It was a massacre. Bon Jovi would weep? Now I definitely want to see it, Adrian teased. They talked through dinner, through dessert, through the auction and the speeches. Kai learned that Adrian had studied English literature in college, that he wrote poetry he never showed anyone, that he'd come out to his conservative parents when he was 19 and hadn't spoken to them in 4 years. Do you miss them? Kai asked gently. Adrian was quiet for a moment, staring into his wine glass. I miss who I thought they were. I miss the parents I had before I told them the truth. But the people they became after, the ones who said I was broken and needed to be fixed, I don't miss them at all. There was steel in his voice, the kind Kai recognized because he'd forged plenty of it himself. I'm sorry, Kai said, meaning it. I came out to my parents when I was 16. My father didn't speak to me for a year, my mother cried, but eventually, they came around, not perfectly but enough. I know I'm lucky. You are, Adrian agreed, but you also survived the hard part. That takes strength. So did you, Kai pointed out. Adrian met his eyes and something passed between them, an understanding that needed no words. When the gala ended, Kai walked Adrian to the hotel entrance, neither of them ready to say goodbye. The Vancouver night was cold and clear, the city lights reflecting off the harbor in streaks of gold and silver. Thank you for tonight, Adrian said, pulling his thin jacket tighter against the chill. I was dreading coming alone, but you made it. Nice, really nice. Kai noticed the jacket, noticed the way Adrian was trying not to shiver, and made a decision. Do you have plans tomorrow? He asked. Adrian blinked, surprised. No, just laundry and groceries. Why, have dinner with me. The words came out more commanding than Kai intended, and he softened his voice. I'd like to continue this conversation if you're interested. He watched emotions flicker across Adrian's face, surprise, uncertainty, hope. Like a date? Adrian asked carefully. Like a date, Kai confirmed, his heart doing something strange and arrhythmic in his chest. Adrian's smile was slow and devastating. Okay, yes, I'd like that. They exchanged numbers, and Kai watched as Adrian climbed into a bus headed east, waving through the window with that open, honest smile. Kai stood on the sidewalk long after the bus disappeared, his phone in his hand, Adrian's contact information glowing on the screen. What was he doing? He didn't date, he didn't do relationships, he didn't let people in. But something about Adrian Walsh had slipped past his defenses like water through cracks in stone, and Kai wasn't sure if he should be terrified or exhilarated. Probably both. He walked home through the empty streets, his mind already planning tomorrow. The restaurant, the conversation, the next step in something he didn't fully understand but couldn't seem to walk away from. By the time he reached his penthouse, he'd made a reservation at Hawksworth, sent Adrian the details, and poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey he didn't drink, just held, staring out at the city that suddenly felt different than it had that morning. Part 3: The UNFOLDING. Their first official date happened on a Sunday evening when the city was quiet and the rain had painted everything in shades of gray and silver. Kai arrived at Hawksworth 10 minutes early, something he never did, and found himself checking his watch every 30 seconds like a teenager. When Adrian walked through the door at exactly 7 p.m., Kai felt his breath catch. Adrian had traded his oversized suit for dark jeans and a navy sweater that brought out his eyes, his hair slightly damp from the rain. and he looked nervous and beautiful, and so completely out of place among the restaurant's usual clientele of business moguls and old money that Kai wanted to protect him from everything all at once. "Hi," Adrian said, a little breathless. As he reached the table, "Sorry the bus was late and then I couldn't find the entrance and—" "You're right on time," Kai interrupted gently, standing to pull out Adrian's chair in a gesture of old-fashioned courtesy that made Adrian's cheeks flush. "You look nice. You look like you walked out of a magazine," Adrian countered, eyes traveling over Kai's charcoal suit and Italian leather shoes. "I feel underdressed." "You're perfect," Kai said and watched Adrian's blush deepen. They ordered wine, studied menus, made small talk about the weather and the restaurant and nothing important at all. But underneath the surface pleasantries, Kai could feel something building, a tension that was part anticipation and part fear and part something he didn't have a name for. "Can I ask you something?" Adrian said after the waiter had taken their orders. "Of course. Why did you ask me out? I mean, you're successful, confident, clearly used to getting what you want. I'm nobody. I work for a nonprofit making barely enough to cover rent. I take the bus everywhere. I buy my clothes at thrift stores. We exist in completely different worlds. So why?" The question was asked without bitterness, just genuine curiosity, and Kai appreciated the honesty. He thought about how to answer, how much truth to offer. "Because you're real," he finally said. "Everyone I meet wants something from me, a business connection, an investment, access to my network. But you ran into me on a street corner and apologized. You smiled at me at a gala and didn't ask what I could do for you. You're just you, and I haven't met anyone like that in a very long time." Adrian absorbed this, his fingers tracing patterns on his wine glass. "I do want something from you," he admitted quietly. "I want to know you, the real you, not the businessman everyone else sees." "Is that allowed?" Kai felt something crack open in his chest, something he'd kept locked for 3 years. "That's allowed," he said, "but I should warn you, the real me isn't as interesting as the public version." "I doubt that," Adrian said with a soft smile, "but I'd like to find out for myself." So Kai talked. He talked about growing up as the son of Chinese immigrants who'd built a restaurant empire through brutal work and impossible hours. He talked about the pressure to succeed, to honor his family, to be perfect. He talked about his relationship with his sister, the only person who'd seen him cry since he was 12. He talked about Marcus, the ex-boyfriend who'd shattered his heart 3 years ago by sleeping with Kai's business partner and then blaming Kai for being too cold, too focused on work, too impossible to love. "After that," Kai said, surprised by how much he was revealing, "I decided love wasn't worth the risk, that being alone was safer than being broken again." Adrian listened without interrupting, his blue eyes steady and understanding. When Kai finished, Adrian reached across the table and placed his hand over Kai's, a gesture so simple and kind that Kai felt his throat tighten. "Thank you for telling me that," Adrian said. "And for what it's worth, Marcus sounds like an idiot who didn't deserve you." Kai laughed, a sound rough with emotion. "Your turn, tell me something real." Adrian withdrew his hand and Kai immediately missed the warmth. "Okay," Adrian said, "real thing, I moved to Vancouver with $800 in a duffel bag. I slept on a friend's couch for 2 months before I found my current place, which is a basement apartment with mold problems and a landlord who ignores maintenance requests. I eat instant noodles 4 nights a week because that's what I can afford. I lie awake at night wondering if I made a mistake leaving everything I knew behind." He paused, meeting Kai's eyes. "But then I remember why I left. I remember my father telling me I was disgusting. I remember my mother crying like I died. I remember the suffocation of pretending to be someone I wasn't. And I know that even if I'm broke and lonely and scared, at least I'm free. At least I'm myself." The rawness of it, the courage, hit Kai like a physical force. "You're not nobody, Adrian," he said firmly. "You're someone who rebuilt their entire life from scratch. That takes more strength than anything I've ever done." "We've both survived things," Adrian said. "Just different things." They ate dinner, duck confit for Kai, pasta for Adrian, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Favorite movies, childhood embarrassments, the questionable decisions they'd made in college. Adrian told stories that made Kai laugh until his sides hurt. Kai shared business disasters that made Adrian's eyes go wide with second-hand panic. By the time dessert arrived, Kai realized he'd been on this date for 3 hours and hadn't checked his phone once. That never happened. When the bill came, Adrian reached for his wallet, but Kai stopped him with a gentle hand on his wrist. "Please don't," Kai said. "I invited you, this is my treat." "I can't let you pay for everything," Adrian protested. "This meal probably cost more than I make in a week." "I know," Kai said softly, "and I don't care, let me do this, let me take care of you." Something vulnerable flashed in Adrian's eyes, something that looked like want and fear mixed together. "Okay," he whispered, "thank you." Kai walked Adrian to the bus stop, insisting despite Adrian's protests that he'd be fine going alone. They stood under the shelter as rain pattered against the plexiglass roof, and the city moved around them in blurs of headlights and hurrying pedestrians. "I had a really good time tonight," Adrian said, turning to face Kai fully. "Like really good. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for you to be secretly terrible or boring or mean, but you're none of those things. You're kind of amazing, Kai Chen." Kai stepped closer, close enough to smell the rain in Adrian's hair, close enough to see the gold flecks in his blue eyes. "I'd like to see you again," he said, his voice low. "If you want that too." "I want that," Adrian breathed. "I really, really want that." The bus pulled up with a hiss of air brakes and a spray of puddle water. Adrian hesitated, looking torn between leaving and staying. "Go," Kai said gently. "Text me when you get home." "I will," Adrian promised. Then in a moment of boldness that made Kai's heart stutter, Adrian leaned up and pressed a soft, brief kiss to Kai's cheek. "Good night, Kai." He was gone before Kai could respond, boarding the bus and disappearing into the rain-soaked night. Kai stood there, one hand touching the place where Adrian's lips had been, feeling something dangerous and wonderful blooming in his chest despite every warning his brain was screaming. He was falling for Adrian Walsh. He knew it, the way he knew gravity existed, the way he knew winter would come. And for the first time in 3 years, Kai Chen didn't want to run from that feeling. He wanted to dive into it head first and see where it took him. Over the next 6 weeks, Kai and Adrian built something fragile and precious between them. They went on dates, art galleries and coffee shops, walks along the seawall, dinner at hole-in-the-wall restaurants Adrian knew that served food Kai had never tried. Adrian introduced Kai to spoken word poetry nights in East Vancouver dive bars. Kai took Adrian to the symphony and watched him get teary-eyed during Beethoven's Ninth. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, learning each other's rhythms and preferences and fears. Kai learned that Adrian took his coffee with too much sugar, that he got quiet when he was overwhelmed, that he had a laugh that started soft and built into something uncontainable. Adrian learned that Kai was meticulous about routines, that he showed love through actions rather than words, that beneath his controlled exterior was someone who felt everything deeply and had just learned to hide it well. They hadn't slept together. They'd kissed until Kai's lips were bruised and his self-control was threadbare, but Adrian had asked to take things slow and Kai had agreed despite the want that burned through him every time Adrian smiled. "I just want to be sure," Adrian had said one night, curled against Kai on his penthouse couch. "My last relationship moved too fast and ended badly. I want this to be different. I want us to be different." "We will be," Kai had promised, kissing Adrian's temple. "We have time." But time, as it turned out, was a luxury they were about to lose. The beginning of the end started with a phone call. Kai was in a board meeting when his phone buzzed with an unknown number. He ignored it. It buzzed again and again. On the 4th call, he excused himself and stepped into the hallway. "This is Kai Chen." "Mr. Chen, this is Vancouver General Hospital. We have an Adrian Walsh here who listed you as his emergency contact." "There's been an incident." The world tilted. "What kind of incident? Is he okay?" "He was assaulted near his apartment. He's stable, but he's asking for you. Can you come?" Kai was moving before the nurse finished speaking, grabbing his coat, his keys, not bothering with explanations to his confused colleagues. He drove to the hospital, breaking every speed limit, his hands tight on the wheel, his mind conjuring horrors he couldn't bear to fully imagine. He found Adrian in a curtained-off section of the ER, sitting on a bed with a split lip, a black eye blooming purple across his cheekbone and bruises around his throat that made Kai see red. "Hey," Adrian said weakly when Kai burst through the curtain. "Sorry for the dramatic summons." Kai crossed the space in 2 strides and very carefully, very gently cupped Adrian's face in his hands, examining every injury with eyes that stung with unshed tears. "Who did this to you?" His voice was deadly quiet. "Tell me who did this and I swear to God." "Kai, stop." Adrian's hands came up to circle Kai's wrists. I'm okay." "You're not okay," Kai said through gritted teeth. "Someone hurt you, someone put their hands on you," and he couldn't finish the sentence. The fury was choking him. Adrian sighed and the sound was so tired, so defeated that Kai's anger transformed into something more dangerous, the need to protect, to fix, to control. "It was some guys from my building," Adrian explained quietly. "They've been making comments for weeks. Today they were waiting by my apartment. They called me names, pushed me around. It could have been worse. A neighbor came out and scared them off. The police are filing a report, but honestly, nothing will probably come of it." "I'm getting you out of that apartment," Kai said immediately. "Today, right now, you're moving in with me." Adrian's eyes widened. "Kai, we've been dating for 6 weeks. That's insane." "What's insane is you going back to a place where people hurt you." Kai's voice was firm, unyielding. "I have space, I have security, you'll be safe." "I don't need you to save me," Adrian said, something sharp entering his voice. "I've been taking care of myself my whole life. I don't need—" "You shouldn't have to," Kai interrupted. "Let me take care of you, please." They stared at each other and Kai could see the war happening behind Adrian's eyes. Pride versus practicality, independence versus safety. "Okay," Adrian finally whispered, "but just until I find a new place. This isn't permanent." "Whatever you need," Kai agreed, relief flooding through him. He helped Adrian through the discharge process, filled his prescriptions, drove him to his basement apartment to pack his belongings. The place was worse than Kai had imagined, damp, dark, with water stains on the ceiling and a heater that barely worked. The fact that Adrian had been living here, suffering here, while Kai had luxury and space to spare made something twist painfully in his chest. They packed Adrian's life into 3 suitcases and 4 boxes. It took less than 2 hours. When they arrived at Kai's penthouse, Adrian stood in the entryway looking small and overwhelmed and hurt, and Kai wanted to burn down the world for him. Guest room is yours, Kai said, showing Adrian down the hall. Private bathroom, closet, anything you need, make yourself at home. This is nicer than anywhere I've ever lived, Adrian said quietly, setting his suitcase down on the king-size bed. Thank you, Kai, really. Kai crossed to him, tilted his chin up gently to avoid the bruises. You don't have to thank me, I just need you safe. He kissed Adrian softly, carefully, mindful of his split lip. Rest, I'll make dinner. The first week of living together was an adjustment. Kai was used to solitude, to controlling his space completely. Now there were Adrian's books on his shelves, Adrian's coffee mugs in his sink, Adrian's presence filling rooms that had been empty for 3 years. It should have felt intrusive. Instead, it felt right in a way that terrified Kai. But as the second week bled into the third, Kai started to notice things. Adrian wasn't looking for a new apartment, he wasn't even browsing listings. When Kai brought it up gently, Adrian would change the subject or say he was still recovering or waiting for the right place. Kai told himself it was fine. He wanted Adrian here, but there was something else happening, something Kai couldn't quite name. Adrian had stopped going to work. He'd taken leave after the assault, which was understandable, but now he spent days in Kai's penthouse, sleeping late, watching TV, ordering takeout on Kai's credit card without asking. When Kai came home from the office, Adrian would be on the couch, still in pajamas, and would light up like Kai was the only good thing in his world. How was your day? Adrian would ask, and Kai would tell him, would share his victories and frustrations, and Adrian would listen with rapt attention. It felt good to be listened to be cared for, but something nagged at Kai, a discomfort he couldn't quite articulate. One evening 3 weeks after Adrian moved in, Kai came home to find his penthouse filled with shopping bags, designer shopping bags. What's all this? Kai asked, setting down his briefcase. Adrian emerged from the bedroom wearing new clothes, expensive clothes. I needed a few things, he said with a bright smile. I used your card, I hope that's okay. Kai's stomach clenched. How much did you spend? I don't know, maybe 3,000. Adrian said it casually like it was nothing. You always say money isn't a problem, so I figured. Adrian, $3,000. Kai tried to keep his voice level. That's more than most people make in a month. You should have asked me first. Something flickered across Adrian's face, something defensive. You've bought me plenty of things without asking. Dinners, gifts, that watch you gave me last week. Why is this different? Because those were my choice, Kai said carefully. This feels like you're taking advantage. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Adrian's expression crumbled. Taking advantage? Are you serious right now? After everything I've been through, you think I'm using you? I didn't say that, Kai backpedaled, but the damage was done. I just think we need to talk about boundaries, about expectations. Boundaries, Adrian repeated, his voice hard. You want boundaries? Fine, I'll move out. I'll go back to my shitty apartment where people want to hurt me. Is that what you want? That's not fair, Kai said, frustration rising. You know I care about you. I just need you to be more mindful. Mindful of what? Of the fact that you're rich and I'm poor. I'm already painfully aware of that, Kai. Every single day I'm aware that I don't belong in your world. Adrian's voice broke. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe you are too cold, too focused on control to actually love someone. The words hit like a knife to the gut. Kai stepped back, something shutting down inside him, the old walls slamming back into place. If that's what you think of me, maybe you should leave. Maybe I should, Adrian shot back, tears streaming down his face. They stared at each other across the wreckage of their relationship, and Kai felt everything good they'd built crumbling into dust. I'm sorry, Adrian whispered. I didn't mean that. I'm just scared and hurt, and I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be in a relationship with someone like you. Someone like me, Kai repeated, his voice hollow. What does that mean? Someone who has everything, someone who doesn't need anything from anyone. How do I fit into your life when you're already complete without me? The vulnerability those words pierced through Kai's anger. He crossed the room, pulled Adrian into his arms, felt him shake with sobs against his chest. I need you, Kai said fiercely. I need you so much it scares me. But Adrian, I can't be in a relationship where I feel like I'm being used. I need honesty, I need partnership. I know, Adrian choked out. I'm sorry, I'll return the clothes, I'll get a job, I'll be better. I don't need you to be better, Kai said, tilting Adrian's face up. I need you to be you, the real you, not whoever you think I want you to be. They made up that night, made love for the first time, tender and desperate and full of unspoken promises. Afterward, tangled in Kai's sheets, Adrian whispered, I love you. Kai's heart stopped. You don't have to say it back, Adrian added quickly. I just needed you to know. But Kai did say it back because it was true, because despite everything rational that told him this was too fast, too much, too dangerous, he'd fallen completely and irrevocably in love with Adrian Walsh. I love you too, he breathed against Adrian's skin and felt Adrian's smile. For a week, things were perfect. Adrian got his job back, started going to therapy, returned the expensive purchases. They found a rhythm, mornings together over coffee, evenings cooking dinner, weekends exploring the city. Kai introduced Adrian to his sister, who immediately loved him. Adrian showed Kai his poetry for the first time, and Kai cried reading words about survival and hope and love. The perfect things Kai should have remembered never last. The second fracture came from an unexpected direction: Adrian's past. Kai came home early one Thursday to find Adrian on the phone, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. "I told you I can't, I don't have it, you need to give me more time." He hung up quickly when he saw Kai, his face pale. "Who was that?" Kai asked. "Nobody, just a wrong number." "Adrian," Kai's voice was firm, "don't lie to me, we promised honesty." Adrian's shoulders slumped. He looked defeated, terrified, trapped. "It's my ex. From before I moved to Vancouver. He loaned me money when I was leaving, and now he's demanding I pay him back with interest I never agreed to. He's threatening to," Adrian swallowed hard. "He's threatening to tell you things about my past, things that would make you leave me." Kai's blood ran cold. "What things?" "I can't," Adrian whispered. "If I tell you, you'll hate me." Kai crossed to him, gripped his shoulders gently. "Try me, whatever it is, we can handle it together." So Adrian told him about the ex-boyfriend who'd been a drug dealer, about the year Adrian had spent helping him, transporting packages, lying to police, about the arrest that had been expunged when Adrian testified against his ex in exchange for immunity, about the shame and guilt he'd carried ever since. "I was 20, Adrian said, tears streaming down his face. "I was stupid and scared and in love with someone who was using me. I got out. I got clean. I rebuilt my life. But Mason, my ex, he's been in prison for 3 years and now he's out and he wants money or he'll ruin me." Kai absorbed this, his mind working through the implications, the risks, the complexity. "How much does he want?" $20,000, Adrian said miserably. "Money I don't have, money I'll never have." Kai's jaw tight. "I'll pay it." "What number?" Kai. "No, I can't let you." "Yes, you can," Kai interrupted firmly. "I'll pay him, but this ends here. You cut all contact. If he threatens you again, we go to the police. We handle this legally." "He'll just keep coming back," Adrian said hopelessly. "People like Mason don't stop." "Then I'll make sure he stops," Kai said, his voice carrying the weight of resources and connections Adrian couldn't fathom. "Trust me." Adrian looked at him with something like awe, something like fear. "Why are you doing this? Why are you helping me after everything I just told you?" "Because I love you," Kai said simply. "Because everyone has a past, because you're not who you were at 20, you're who you are now, and I love who you are now." He paid the money, $20,000 wired to an account that very day. Mason disappeared and Adrian breathed easier, but something had shifted between them, something subtle and poisonous. Kai had saved Adrian, again. He'd swooped in with money and power and fixed the problem that Adrian couldn't fix himself. It should have brought them closer. Instead, it drove a wedge between them that neither acknowledged but both felt. The months that followed were a slow-motion disaster disguised as domestic bliss. To the outside world, Kai and Adrian were the perfect couple, successful businessman and his devoted partner, attending charity events and dinner parties, photographed for local magazines, doing the power couple thing. Adrian had moved into Kai's bedroom permanently, his things mingling with Kai's in a way that should have felt natural, but increasingly felt like Adrian was disappearing into Kai's shadow. At work, Adrian excelled. His nonprofit promoted him twice in 4 months. He was good at his job, creative and passionate, and Kai was proud of him. But at home, things were complicated. Adrian had become dependent on Kai in ways that made Kai uncomfortable, but that he couldn't articulate without sounding cruel. Every major decision came to Kai: where to eat, what to do on weekends, whether Adrian should accept a job offer in a different city. "What do you think I should do?" Adrian would ask, and Kai would answer, and Adrian would follow that answer like it was gospel. "You can make your own decisions," Kai told him one evening. "I know," Adrian said. "But your judgment is better than mine. You're smarter, more experienced. Why wouldn't I listen to you?" There was no good answer to that. Kai's sister noticed. "He's lovely," Jenny said over lunch one day, "but he seems, I don't know, like he's trying to disappear into you. Does that make sense?" "It makes too much sense," Kai admitted. "I don't know how to fix it without hurting him." "Maybe he needs to hurt a little," Jenny said gently. "Maybe he needs to find himself outside of his relationship with you. You can't save someone who doesn't want to save themselves, Kai. You can only love them and hope they find their own way." But Kai didn't know how to love someone without trying to fix their problems. It was who he was, how he showed care. When Adrian was stressed, Kai threw money at the problem. When Adrian was upset, Kai solved whatever was upsetting him. It worked for a while until it didn't. The real trouble started when Adrian's parents reached out. They'd found him through social media, had seen pictures of him with Kai, had done their research and learned exactly how wealthy Kai was. The letter came on a Tuesday. Adrian opened it at the kitchen table while Kai made coffee, and Kai watched his boyfriend's face go from curious to devastated in the span of seconds. "They want to reconcile," Adrian whispered, staring at the handwritten pages. "After 4 years of silence, they suddenly want to reconcile." Kai read the letter over Adrian's shoulder and felt his blood boil. It was manipulative, carefully worded to sound loving while being full of veiled judgment. They were sorry, they said, but they'd been confused. They loved him, they said, but they needed time to accept his lifestyle. They wanted to meet Kai, they said, because it's important to know who our son is spending his life with. They don't want to reconcile, Kai said flatly. They want access to my bank account through you. You don't know that, Adrian protested, but his voice lacked conviction. They're my parents, Kai. Maybe they've changed. Maybe they read between the lines, Adrian. They ignored you until you got together with someone who has money. Now suddenly they care. That's not love. That's opportunism. Adrian's eyes flashed with anger. You don't get to tell me what my parents' motives are. You don't know them. I know enough, Kai said, his voice hard. I've seen this before. People come out of the woodwork when they think there's something to gain. Don't let them use you. Like you think I'm using you? The words exploded out of Adrian like shrapnel. Is that what this is really about? You think everyone in my life is just trying to take advantage of the great Kai Chen? That's not what I said, Kai shot back, frustration rising. But yes, Adrian, people do use me. It happens constantly, and I won't apologize for being protective. You're not being protective, you're being controlling, Adrian said, his voice shaking. You want to decide who I talk to, how I spend money, what jobs I take. You say you love me, but what you really love is having someone to save, someone to control, someone who makes you feel powerful. The accusation hit like a slap. That's not fair, Kai said, but doubt was creeping in. Was Adrian right? Had he been recreating the same dynamic he'd had with Marcus, just with different roles? You want to know what's not fair? Adrian continued, tears streaming down his face now. Having a boyfriend who pays for everything and then holds it over your head. Having someone claim they love you but can't trust you to make a single decision without their input. Being treated like a charity case instead of a partner. I have never treated you like a charity case, Kai said, his voice dangerously quiet. Everything I've done has been because I love you, because I wanted to protect you. I don't need protection, Adrian shouted. I need a partner. I need someone who believes I can handle my own life. But you don't believe that, do you? You think I'm weak and broken and helpless without you. If you really believed you weren't those things, you wouldn't need me to tell you, Kai said, and regretted the words immediately. Adrian's face crumpled. He stared at Kai like he'd been struck, and Kai watched the love in his eyes transform into something else, something hurt and angry and final. I think I need to move out, Adrian said quietly. Adrian, no, Adrian interrupted, wiping his eyes. This isn't working, we're not working, we love each other but we're destroying each other. You need someone who lets you be in control, I need someone who lets me be myself. And right now we can't give each other those things. Kai wanted to argue, wanted to fix this the way he fixed everything, but the words stuck in his throat, because Adrian was right. They were destroying each other slowly and surely with love that had become toxic. Where will you go? Kai asked, his voice hollow. I have friends, I'll figure it out. Adrian started toward the bedroom, then turned back. For what it's worth, I do love you, I think I always will, but love isn't enough, not when it hurts this much. Kai stood in the kitchen as Adrian packed, as he loaded his belongings into a friend's car, as he walked out the door without looking back. The penthouse felt cavernous and empty, like someone had carved out its heart and left only glass and steel and silence. Kai poured himself a drink he didn't want, stared at the city lights that had once felt like power and now felt like loneliness, and wondered how something that had started so right had gone so catastrophically wrong. That night, he didn't sleep. He replayed every conversation, every decision, every moment where he could have chosen differently. The next morning, Jenny called. I heard, she said gently. Are you okay? No, Kai admitted, I'm really not. Part 6, the Rebolding. The weeks after Adrian left were the darkest Kai had experienced in years. He threw himself into work with an intensity that scared even Marcus, his assistant. 18-hour days became 20-hour days. He slept at the office more nights than not. He avoided his penthouse where everything reminded him of Adrian, the coffee mugs, the books, the imprint on the bed where Adrian's body used to curl against his. He went to therapy. Dr. Morrison listened to the whole story without judgment and then said something that broke Kai open. You can't save someone from their life, Kai. You can only walk beside them while they save themselves. Until you learn that, you'll keep recreating this pattern. So what do I do? Kai asked, his voice raw. You work on yourself, you figure out why you need to be needed. You learn to trust other people's competence, and you let Adrian go really go so he can become who he needs to become. Letting go was harder than anything Kai had ever done. He deleted Adrian's contact information so he wouldn't drunk text him at 3 a.m. He avoided the places they used to go together. He told his sister and friends that Adrian's name was off limits. But Adrian was everywhere, in songs on the radio, in strangers' laughs that sounded like his, in the poetry books Kai found himself reading because Adrian had loved them. Meanwhile, across the city, Adrian was doing his own rebuilding. He'd moved in with coworkers who charged him reasonable rent for a room in a shared house. He'd started going to a support group for LGBTQ+ people with complicated family situations. He'd begun writing again, really writing poetry that processed his pain and growth. He missed Kai constantly. The temptation to call him, to show up at his penthouse and beg for another chance was overwhelming. But Adrian knew Jenny had been right. He needed to find himself outside of Kai's shadow. He needed to prove to himself that he could stand on his own. He threw himself into work, into friendships, into therapy. He learned to sit with discomfort instead of running to someone else to fix it. He met with his parents, against everyone's advice, and discovered Kai had been right. They wanted access to his relationship with a wealthy man more than they wanted a relationship with their son. It hurt, but it also freed him. He could finally close that door. 3 months after their breakup, Adrian got promoted to program director at his nonprofit. It was a significant role with real responsibility and a salary that, while not Kai level, was enough for him to move into his own apartment. A real apartment with functioning heat and no mold in a neighborhood where he felt safe. He furnished it slowly, with pieces from thrift stores and second-hand markets, and every item felt like a victory. He thought about Kai every day, wondered if he was okay, if he thought about Adrian too, if he'd moved on. Adrian hoped he had, Adrian hoped he hadn't. One evening 6 months after their breakup, Adrian was at a coffee shop working on his laptop when he looked up and saw Kai walking in. Their eyes met across the crowded space and Adrian's heart stopped. Kai looked different, thinner, tired, older somehow, but also more open, less armored. They stared at each other for a long moment and then Kai walked over. "Hi," Kai said. "Hi," Adrian breathed. "How are you?" "I'm okay," Kai said. "Better, different, how are you?" "Same, better and different." They smiled at each other, awkward and sad and still so in love it hurt. "Can I sit?" Kai asked. "Please." Kai sat and they talked, really talked in a way they hadn't been able to when they were together. Kai told Adrian about therapy, about learning to let go of control, about realizing that his need to save people had been about his own trauma, not about love. Adrian told Kai about his promotion, his apartment, his poetry that had been published in a local journal. "I'm proud of you," Kai said sincerely. "You've become exactly who you were meant to be." "So have you," Adrian said. "You seem lighter, less like you're carrying the weight of the world." "I'm learning," Kai admitted. "It's slow work, but I'm learning." They finished their coffee and when they stood to leave, neither wanted to say goodbye. "Can I call you sometime?" Kai asked carefully. "As friends, I'd like to be in your life even if it's different than before." Adrian's heart ached with want and wisdom. "I'd like that," he said, "but Kai, I need to say something first." "Okay, I loved you. I love you still, but we can't go back to what we were. We hurt each other too much. If we're going to be in each other's lives, it has to be as equals. No saving, no fixing, just two people who care about each other and respect each other's autonomy. Can you do that?" Kai thought about it, really thought, before answering. "I can try, I want to try." "Then yes," Adrian said, "call me sometime." They went their separate ways and Adrian walked home through the Vancouver evening feeling both heartbroken and hopeful. Maybe they'd find their way back to each other eventually. Maybe they wouldn't. Either way, Adrian knew he'd be okay. For the next 3 months, Kai and Adrian rebuilt their relationship from the ground up as friends. They met for coffee once a week, texted occasionally, kept things light and boundaried. It was painful and wonderful and necessary. Kai learned to celebrate Adrian's victories without trying to create them. Adrian learned to share his struggles without expecting Kai to fix them. Slowly, carefully, they rediscovered what they liked about each other without the toxicity that had poisoned them before. And then 9 months after their breakup, something shifted. They were having dinner just as friends they'd insisted, when Adrian said something that made Kai laugh, really laugh the way he used to. And Kai looked at Adrian across the table and saw not someone who needed saving, but someone who'd saved himself. Someone strong and whole and beautifully independent. "I'm still in love with you," Kai said, the words surprising both of them. Adrian's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "Kai, let me finish," Kai interrupted gently. "I'm in love with you, but I don't need you. I don't need to save you or control you or fix you. I just want to be with you, as partners, as equals, if you'll have me. And if you won't, I understand. I'll still be your friend. I'll still be in your life however you'll let me, but I had to tell you." Adrian set down his fork, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "I'm still in love with you too," he admitted. "I never stopped, but I'm scared, Kai. I'm scared we'll fall into the same patterns. I'm scared I'll lose myself again." "I'm scared too," Kai said honestly. "But I'm not the same person I was 9 months ago, are you?" "No," Adrian whispered, "I'm not." "Then maybe," Kai said, reaching across the table to take Adrian's hand, "maybe we can try again, differently this time, better this time." Adrian's fingers laced with his and the touch felt like coming home and stepping into something new all at once. "Okay," Adrian said, "let's try again." They started over slowly, dadding like they were meeting for the first time, learning each other's new shapes and boundaries. Kai resisted the urge to shower Adrian with expensive gifts, instead offering thoughtful things, books Adrian mentioned wanting. Tickets to poetry readings, his time and attention. Adrian resisted the urge to defer every decision to Kai, instead voicing his own opinions and preferences even when they differed from Kai's. They fought sometimes, but differently than before. When Kai started slipping into controlling behavior, Adrian called him on it immediately and Kai apologized and corrected course. When Adrian started making himself smaller, Kai pointed it out gently, and Adrian worked to stand in his full size. 3 months into their second attempt, Adrian's nonprofit offered him a position leading a new program in Seattle. It was a huge opportunity, a significant raise, a chance to make real impact. Adrian brought it up over dinner, nervous and excited. It would mean leaving Vancouver, Adrian said carefully. Leaving you, at least physically. We could try long distance, but you should take it, Kai interrupted. Adrian blinked. What? You should take it, Kai repeated firmly. It's an amazing opportunity, you'd be incredible at it, and Adrian, I love you, but I won't be the reason you don't pursue your dreams. But what about us? We'll figure it out, Kai said. Long distance, me visiting Seattle, you visiting Vancouver, or maybe in a year or two I look at opening a branch of my firm there. We have options, but you taking this job isn't one of them. You take it, period. Adrian's eyes filled with tears. You really mean that? I really mean it, Kai said. I want you to have everything you want, even if it complicates my life, especially if it complicates my life, because you're worth it. Adrian took the job. They tried long distance and it was hard but not impossible. Kai visited Seattle twice a month. Adrian came back to Vancouver on long weekends. They video called every night, sharing their days, their struggles, their victories. They missed each other constantly, but they also gave each other space to grow. Adrian thrived in Seattle. He built programs that changed lives, won awards, became a recognized voice in LGBTQ+ advocacy. Kai watched him shine and felt nothing but pride and love, untainted by any need to claim credit for Adrian's success. After a year, Kai did something he'd never imagined. He started looking at properties in Seattle, not to move full-time but to split his time. His firm could survive without him in Vancouver every day. He'd built a strong team, learned to delegate, discovered that the world didn't collapse when he wasn't controlling every detail. I'm thinking of getting a place in Capitol Hill, Kai mentioned casually during one of Adrian's visits. It's a nice neighborhood, good coffee shops. I could stay there when I visit instead of hotels. Adrian looked at him carefully. That's a big step, are you sure? I'm sure, Kai said. I want to be part of your life wherever that life is, and Adrian, I was thinking, maybe we could get a place together, not right away but eventually, when you're ready. Adrian's breath caught. Are you asking me to move in with you? Again, I'm asking if you'd consider building a home with me, Kai corrected. As equals, as partners, when the time is right. Adrian smiled, that beautiful open smile Kai had fallen in love with 2 years ago. Ask me again in 6 months, he said, when you've proven you can handle Seattle traffic and rain that makes Vancouver look sunny. Deal, Kai laughed. 6 months later, Kai asked again. They were walking through a house in Capitol Hill, a beautiful Victorian with hardwood floors and a garden that needed work. What do you think? Kai asked. Too big, too small, too far from your office? I think, Adrian said slowly, turning to face Kai fully, that it's perfect. I think we should make an offer. I think we should build a life here together. Kai's heart soared. Yeah, Adrian confirmed. But Kai, this time I'm paying half. I've saved up and I need this to be ours, not yours. Equal partnership, remember. Equal partnership, Kai agreed and kissed him in the empty living room of what would become their home. They closed on the house 3 months later. They furnished it together, arguing good-naturedly about aesthetics and functionality, compromising and laughing and creating something that reflected both of them. Kai kept his Vancouver penthouse but spent most of his time in Seattle. Adrian bloomed in ways Kai had never imagined, confident and powerful and entirely himself. One evening, a year after moving into their Seattle home, they were cooking dinner together. A new recipe Adrian wanted to try, something complicated involving too many ingredients and precise timing. Kai was chopping vegetables while Adrian managed 3 pans simultaneously, and music was playing and everything was ordinary and perfect. I have something to tell you, Kai said. Adrian looked up from his pan. Should I be worried? No, Kai said, setting down his knife. I've been working with a jeweler. There's a ring being made. White gold because you hate yellow gold. Simple band because you think diamonds are ostentatious. It should be ready in about 3 weeks. Adrian's hand stilled. His eyes went wide. Kai, I'm not asking yet, Kai said quickly. I'm telling you it's coming because I want you to have time to think, to be sure to tell me if marriage is even something you want. I won't pressure you. If you say no, we stay exactly as we are and I'm happy. But Adrian, I want to marry you. I want to build this life with you officially, when you're ready, if you're ready. Adrian set down his wooden spoon, crossed to Kai and cupped his face in both hands. Ask me now, he whispered. What? Ask me now, Adrian repeated. I don't need 3 weeks to know my answer. Kai's heart was hammering. I don't have the ring. I don't need a ring. I need you. Ask me. So Kai did, right there in their kitchen, with vegetables half-chopped and something starting to burn on the stove and music still playing. He took both of Adrian's hands in his and said, Adrian Walsh, will you marry me? Will you be my partner and equal in love for the rest of our lives? Yes, Adrian said, tears streaming down his face. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They kissed and the pan burned and neither of them cared. Later, after they'd ordered pizza because dinner was ruined, they lay in bed talking about the future. Their wedding would be small, they decided, just close friends and family. Jenny would be Kai's best woman. Adrian's work friends would stand up for him. They'd get married at City Hall and have a reception in their garden. Do you think we'll be happy? Adrian asked quietly. Forever happy, Kai thought about his answer. I think we'll have hard times. I think we'll fight and struggle and face things we can't predict. But yes, I think we'll be happy because we've learned how to be partners, because we've both done the work to become people who can love each other healthily, because this time it's different. This time it's different, Adrian echoed and smiled into the darkness. The ring arrived 3 weeks later, simple and perfect, and fit Adrian's finger like it had been made for him, because it had. Just like they'd been made for each other, even if it had taken breaking apart and rebuilding to figure out how to fit together right. The wedding was everything they'd wanted, intimate and joyful and perfectly them. Ginny cried through the entire ceremony. Half of Adrian's nonprofit showed up despite not being invited, crowding into their garden with champagne and well wishes. Kai's business partners gave a toast that was both hilarious and touching. Adrian read a poem he'd written for Kai that made everyone weep. They honeymooned in Japan, spending 2 weeks eating incredible food, soaking in hot springs, and exploring temples and cities. When they came home to Seattle, their house felt more like home than anywhere either had ever lived. Year 2 of marriage brought challenges. Kai's father had a heart attack and spent months recovering. Adrian's nonprofit lost funding and had to restructure. They weathered it together, leaning on each other, supporting each other, never losing sight of the partnership they'd fought so hard to build. Year 3 brought joy. Kai's firm opened a successful Seattle office that he ran personally. Adrian published a poetry collection that got reviewed in the New York Times. They talked about adopting a child maybe in a few years when they were ready. They adopted a dog immediately, a rescue mutt named Charlie who slept between them and made their lives messier and infinitely better. On their 3rd anniversary, they sat in their garden watching the sunset paint the Seattle sky in shades of pink and gold. Charlie was asleep at their feet. Kai's hand was in Adrian's. Everything was quiet and perfect. "Do you remember the night you showed up at my penthouse in Vancouver?" Kai asked, soaked from rain, crying, begging me to listen. "I remember," Adrian said. "I thought you'd send me away." "I almost did," Kai admitted. "I was so scared of letting you back in, so sure you'd break me again. But you didn't send me away." "No," Kai said, lifting Adrian's hand to kiss his knuckles. "I didn't, and you know what? It was the best decision I ever made. Not the first time when I let you move in too fast and tried to save you, but the second time when we did it right." "We did do it right," Adrian agreed. "Eventually. After we both did a lot of therapy and growing up." They laughed, the sound soft and comfortable, the laugh of people who knew each other completely and loved each other anyway. "I love you," Kai said, not for the first time, not for the last time, but like he meant it more than he'd ever meant anything. "I love you too," Adrian replied, "my powerful, soft-hearted husband." "You're what?" Kai sputtered, but he was smiling. "You heard me," Adrian teased. "You act all tough and dominant, but you're soft inside, soft for me anyway." "Only for you," Kai confirmed, pulling Adrian closer. "Always for you." They sat in their garden as the sun set completely and the stars came out, and they were happy. Not perfectly happy, not without challenges or fears or struggles, but happy in the way that mattered, together, equal, whole. And somewhere in Vancouver, in a penthouse that Kai still owned but rarely visited, there was a photo on the bedside table. 2 men, younger versions of themselves, smiling at a charity gala, falling in love for the first time. It hadn't worked out the first time, but the second time they got it right. And that, Kai thought as he kissed his husband under the Seattle stars, made all the pain worth it. Because sometimes love isn't about getting it right the first time. Sometimes it's about being brave enough to try again, wiser and stronger and better prepared to build something that lasts. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is surrender control. Sometimes the softest thing you can do is stand your ground. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you find someone who teaches you both. Kai had found that someone, Adrian had found that someone, and together they'd built a love story that was messy and complicated and real, and theirs, that was enough, that was everything, that was home.